Welcome back to another episode of That Don't Sound Right.
And today we've got a great conversation. We're going to talk with Philip Murray. And this is our traditional Easter episode. Philip, thanks for joining us. But this episode will air on what we call the in-between day, in between Good Friday and Easter. Pastor, a friend of mine, always referred to this as the in-between. We always try to pick something either from the Christmas story or the Easter story that may not sound right to a non-believer or even a believer, and then we kind of expound upon that.
That's right. And so Philip joins us today. He has his own podcast and YouTube channel called the League of Biblical Enthusiasts. And he specializes in the archaeology and the ancient writings of the Bible. You want to tell us a little bit more about that channel real quick?
Sure. I graduated in 1976 from Harding University, Graduate School of Religion, with an MTH in theology. And even though I later went into IT, my first love has always been and still is kind of the academic side of the Bible. And so my channel tries to expose to the average person, get them their feet wet in the academic study of the Bible.
And so we are very excited to have you here because it's normally just me and Cecil. But I feel like if we were going to ask somebody, we'd ask you. So
you kind of classed the joint up for us.
It really is. So
now,
as I like to say with all my guests, Philip Murray, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Let me say one quick thing. If you're one of our followers, please go and follow his channel. And now that we've said that, you'll have tens of new.
Oh yeah, dozens.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm monetized now, so keep it going.
Okay, all right, here we go.
But we'll put the links in the show notes.
Yeah, we sure will. We sure will.
So all right, take it away.
So really, the question we always have around Christmas, at Christmas and Easter, is what don't sound right? That don't sound right about a particular part of this, in this case, the Easter story. And I'm sure you have read and studied and still are saying the same thing. That don't sound right.
Exactly. So we're all familiar with the Easter story. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John devote most of their books to the last week of Jesus' life. Mm-hmm. In particular, his trial, the crucifixion, and for Easter week, the resurrection.
Right.
Imagine if the resurrection story ended like this, and I'm going to read straight out of the book of Mark, the last chapter, all right. 16. The women fled from the tomb, trembling and bewildered, and they said nothing to anyone because they were too frightened. End of story.
The end.
End of gospel.
All right.
Right there. No Jesus appearing to the two walking to Emmaus, no final exhortation, go into all the world, blah, blah, blah. They were frightened. That's the last words. Right. That don't sound right.
No.
Is that where that gospel originally stopped?
That's the 100% question.
Oh, really?
I believe it is. Mm. Obviously, there is some debate on this whole issue. But why do we have the rest of the verses in our Bible now? Verses 9 through 20. They purported this to Peter. Jesus rose from the dead. The first person was Mary Magdalene, and go into all the world and all that, take snakes and so forth. That's what we have for the following verses. Mm-hmm. Well, why do we have that part if it wasn't really supposed to be there? Mm. In the King James Version, it was included, and primarily because the King James Bible depended and only had access to, frankly, a handful of manuscripts. I'm talking less than 20 Greek manuscripts.
Which is still statistically significant, isn't it?
Well, now we have, in whole or in part, 5,800 plus Greek manuscripts. So no, not really.
All right, okay.
But that's what they had. They were late Greek manuscripts. They included this section. And because King James is in English, I grew up on the King James Bible. I don't know if you did, but I'm old enough to have grown up on it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I read. That's what I heard preached, and that's what I believe. And it's not that the story, as it continued, the things that have happened in verses 9 through 20, they're also paralleled in Matthew and Luke and in John. So, and then again, I don't believe 9 through 20 really is the original text of Mark. But so, even at that, the content of it is duplicated in the other Gospels. So it's not like it's just completely...
It's not out of place.
It's not out of place. So, as a matter of fact, it really looks like Mark, in the absence of what the other Gospels had, somebody later went in and said, that don't sound right. The women were bewildered and they fled. That don't sound right. Okay. Let's see what we've got to fill into this. And so typically, if you're a scribe and you're copying, your tendency is to add things rather than to take things away.
Really?
To fill out the blanks. Like, why, what about this? And so you'll make a little note. That's the tendency in scribal practice, is to add rather than delete. Okay. And I think that's what happened here.
So how long did people just have Mark ending with verse 8? Like, how long did that, do you think that was kind of carried forward?
Yeah, it looks like it was added sometime, maybe 3rd century-ish or so, because there are 2 of our most ancient and complete Greek Bibles, Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. They don't have it.
Okay.
So our earliest Armenian Bible doesn't have it. The earliest Latin Bible doesn't have it. The earliest Syriac Bible doesn't have it. So where did it come from? Again, I think it was a scribe or somebody saying, that don't sound right. And so what we know from these other Gospels, they give us detail. And it really looks like what we have in 9 through 20 is kind of a compilation of adding what we found in Matthew and Luke and John in an abbreviated way.
Really?
Just filling in the blanks.
I've always, and if you've never opened a Bible, in most Bibles it says the original text ends here, and then it has a footnote. And I've always kind of skipped over that. Like, I've never thought about the fact that Mark ended at that point originally.
It would have been like for it to end there.
Yeah. Because the resurrection is still happening. Jesus
has already been noticed that, they say, why are you looking for, the living among the dead? He's not here. He's risen from the dead. This is verse 6. And go tell his disciples. So it's not missing the resurrection. Right. The resurrection's still here. What happened after the resurrection with the 2 disciples on the way to Emmaus and so forth, that's not there. And so you think, why did Mark end with kind of a...
Why did he end there?
Yeah. Well, think about this. When Mark was composed, and some people, actually the scholarly consensus is that Mark was the first gospel written. This is still a time early in the church when Christians were being, persecuted from time to time in different places here and there. It wasn't like an empire-wide thing, but still, they were not a favored people.
Right.
So they were facing persecution at different times, different places. Maybe the thinking is, because we're looking back, we know the story after this is that Jesus did rise from the dead. The movement is still continuing amidst fear. Maybe it was written to people who were afraid, as if to say, look, the earliest witnesses to the resurrection, they were afraid too, but guess what? The movement still goes on.
Right. It was, the fear did not stop the movement.
Exactly.
Now, Mark was also pretty abbreviated in all of his gospel, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think he wrote the gospel the same way I would write something. Be like,
he was a man for sure.
Yeah, I saw Jesus today.
Details.
He was very brief.
Very brief.
Would that be a true statement?
Oh, it is a true statement. Yeah. Very abbreviated, just the facts, ma'am. Nothing else. No elaboration. It moves very quickly, but all the other Gospels fill out a lot of detail. And this is one of the reasons people think maybe Mark was first, because it's the shortest account. Luke and Matthew used Mark, added to his stories. John did the same. So.
Yeah, I could see like me being like, I'm going to get back to this later after verse 8 and then not getting back to it.
So how do we reconcile this? How do we reconcile this addition? I mean, clearly there's over 5,000 manuscripts that the vast majority have.
Yes. What happened was, when it was, it's obviously at some point scribes began to trust the longer version.
Mhm.
So later in time, it was copied more and more and more and more and more. And by the time the King James translators came about, that's what they had. They had this version, the longer version, we call the longer ending of Mark.
Did they have the shorter version at their fingertips? Had they
That's a good
discovered
question.
those?
I really don't think they did, because all the manuscripts they had were late. I'm
Yeah.
talking late medieval manuscripts, and so I don't think any of them had the abbreviated
I
version.
gotcha.
So this is all they had, the longer version. And until the 19th century, the English translations all carried it. And so what happened in the 19th century was, this was the great time of manuscript discovery. And I carry this forward in a lot of my episodes. I have a playlist called Manuscript Hunters.
Okay.
So these guys went all over the Middle East looking for manuscripts. And there's one Oxford, two scholars, Brent Grenfell and Hunt are their last names. They stumbled upon, they knew what they were looking for, but they literally stumbled upon hundreds of thousands of Greek manuscripts in the deserts of Egypt.
Wow.
And so much to this day, they have not, their boxes
They're
still
still
waiting
looking
to be
through.
open
Yeah.
to go
Next
through.
to the
them.
Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, exactly. Right there, that big long hallway. Funny you say that. There is a picture of a fellow named Solomon Schechter, who was another manuscript hunter. Classic picture of him sitting in a big room with boxes everywhere scattered with manuscripts on the floor around, and he's like this, like, oh my gosh, how many more can I do?
Right.
It's a great line. But yeah.
So there's manuscripts that haven't even been touched yet.
Yes, and primarily these are scraps. They're not the whole, large portions. The large format manuscripts, we've all been through them.
Right.
Not to say that they're not more to be found. I think there are some out there in some monasteries that hidden away, maybe forgotten. A lot of interesting stories about how those have been discovered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun to think about, that there's still a monastery out there tucked away somewhere that nobody's really paying attention to. And, I'm going through stuff of my dad's right now. And it's just so easy for, even within the span of a lifetime, to tuck stuff away. So I can't imagine over like thousands of years what could be tucked away and stuck. Yeah. That's fascinating that you bring that up. That was a perfect TSR topic. But there's something else I wanted. Did you want to expound on that? Because I have a question for you if you do.
No.
The Joanna Ossuary. We were talking about this before the episode started.
Okay.
So
You might need to describe it.
yeah, I know you can expound upon it. But the Joanna Ossuary, there's a lady named Joanna that's mentioned only in Luke's gospel, right? And recently they discovered a box that contained typically bones, like it's a burial box, called an ossuary, that mentions, it mentions Joanna's name, but doesn't it also mention Theophilus'
Yes,
name?
it does.
Yeah, so it mentions the two big characters in Luke. So if you're not familiar with the Bible, the Gospel of Luke, Luke's a physician. Correct me if I go off the rails here. Yeah. So Luke, the writer of Luke, is writing to someone specifically. His name was Theophilus.
Yes.
And in this letter, he mentions Joanna. So I'll let you take it from there.
Well, good. Like you said, the Gospel of Luke mentions a Joanna, and no other Gospel mentions a Joanna as a follower of Jesus. We all know Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Martha, Salome, and others. But here's Joanna in Luke that doesn't appear anywhere else. Well, who is Joanna? It turns out she's a very wealthy and powerful woman, because she's the wife of the chief administrator of Herod Antipas, who reigns over Judea. She's mentioned twice, introduced first in the early chapters of Luke as one of those women, wealthy women, who supported the ministry of Jesus. That's a whole nother, we should talk about that one day. You guys should. How without women, Christianity would have failed miserably. It really would have.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have gotten off the ground. So she was mentioned as the wife of this fellow. His name is Chuza, which is the Nabatean name. It's irrelevant, but but Luke mentions it, so it must have some relevance. Anyway, the King James translate his role as steward. Really a bad translation, because when I think of steward, I think, okay, here's the guy that brings me my drinks by the pool. He's the guy that brings my slippers when I'm getting ready to go to bed, or he's going to introduce the guest to the host. It's like the second in command, basically.
Okay.
Herod Antipas turned basically all of the affairs that he didn't want to deal with over to his chief administrator.
All right.
that guy's wife is Joanna.
There you go.
So he's very respected, Cusa, her husband, by virtue of being his wife, she is in wealth.
Mm.
If the Joanna Ossuary is talking about the same Joanna as Luke, then she's also the granddaughter of the high priest, Theophilus.
Oh.
That changes everything. Because if that's the Theophilus Luke is writing to, either this Theophilus, if he's a high priest, he obviously has some interest in the Jesus movement. So is he a follower already?
Mm-hmm.
Or is he on the edge, about to be? You know, when you read, if the Joanna Ossuary is actually talking about the Joanna and Theophilus of Luke, that is a game changer. How to understand Luke, who it was written to. A lot of things fall out. Even the dating of the book of Luke would be much earlier than typically scholars date it.
Is that right? Would it be earlier than Mark?
No,
Okay.
no, but in the same time frame,
Okay.
pre-70 AD.
The Herod of that time would have been installed by Rome, right? He would have been.
He was actually installed by a
Jewish?
fellow named Vitellius, who was a client of Rome. Yes,
Okay.
he was a legate of Syria,
Okay.
which is a Roman client state, just like Judea was.
So that would have been, I guess that would have been scandalous for Joanna to be a follower of Christ.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And that might explain, and here's an interesting factoid. The ossuary itself is plain, very plain, not ornate. Many ossuaries of wealthy people, of powerful people, had some amazing rosettes and engravings and carving. You can see them today, and they're just beautiful artwork. Hers is like, no, plain Jane, nothing ornate about it. There's some very basic drawings. But some people say, well, perhaps because she was a follower of Jesus, she was cast out of the family, was not buried in the family tomb, and was not given the privilege of that kind of burial.
What is the inscription? I don't remember. I've seen the ossuary. I've seen people, but I don't remember what the inscription was. But it mentions both names.
Yes, it basically says 3 lines, all in Aramaic. They're 2 Hebrew words, but Joanna, daughter of Jehochanan, which is John, son of Theophilus the high priest. So she was a great-granddaughter of Theophilus.
So what would that change for us about the understanding of Luke?
I grew up understanding that Theophilus was just kind of a code word meaning friend of God, lover of God.
Right.
Anybody who reads the book, you're a lover of God, and
right.
so I'm writing to tell you about Jesus. But no, this was a real living flesh and blood person. And not only that, the high priest of Israel.
Right.
So that is a game changer. And it changes how you read a lot of things in the book of Luke.
So he would be writing to the high priest of the Jewish faith.
Absolutely. And Theophilus was his Caiaphas was another high priest. Okay, there was a dynasty of high priests in the first century called the House of Annas. Annas had 5 sons. Theophilus was one of them. He was the 4th. But the high priest at the time of the trial was Caiaphas. Right. But Theophilus would have been there. He would have been at the trial of Jesus, hearing things. Who knows what all of his role was? But he was there. So maybe Luke is trying to tell him, look, you want to know the whole story? Here it is, beginning to end.
Because he would have been in all the Theophilus would have been all the backstory of leading up to the trial, and all the backstory of the persecution,
right,
and then the execution, and then the resurrection. He would have known all of the chatter going on amongst the ministry, the temple. Right.
And if Joanna was, the same as the high priest's granddaughter, Luke says, oh, by the way, in the resurrection, guess who was there? Your granddaughter, Joanna. Yeah. She was among the women to the tomb.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and Herod Antipas, only Luke describes the role of Herod Antipas. Do you remember when they were passing Jesus back and forth? You went to Caiaphas and he came back here. And at one point, he was interviewed by Herod Antipas. Only Luke mentions that. And you might say, well, what's the significance of that? Well, it could be that, again, Joanna's husband was his chief administrator.
Right, right.
And Joanna she would have heard things that nobody else would have heard.
Yeah.
And maybe she was one of the sources for some of the stories of Luke.
Wow.
Maybe part of this is to say this, to change Theophilus' mind about Joanna. Look, your granddaughter's not crazy.
Right.
Exactly.
This all happened. This is our side of the story.
Yeah.
It also makes you realize that Luke must have had some credibility in the society at the time.
It also, to me, emphasizes his first few verses about how he went to pains saying, this is not an off-the-cuff writing.
Right.
I have researched, he says, many people have written about accounts about what has happened. They use eyewitness reports, but I have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, and I've decided to write an accurate account for you, most honorable Theophilus, so you can be certain of the truth of everything you were taught.
So that makes you, that when you read it in the light of the ossuary, that changes Theophilus from a title to a man. Yeah.
Exactly.
And a very important figure.
Important, yeah.
And that's why Luke starts out the letter just with that, to say, hey, look, this is not, I'm just not some guy off the street.
Right. It's not all just hearsay.
Right.
Well, this doesn't sound right because I think we got a lot more to talk about.
Stop.
But
It don't sound right, but we got to stop.
I think we've come to the end of this episode of That Don't Sound Right.
Hey, if this is your first time listening or watching us on YouTube and you enjoyed, please hit that like button. Also, don't forget to head on over to the League of Biblical Enthusiasts on YouTube. Philip has a lot more content and a lot more information on all kinds of facts about the Bible and archaeology. A lot more than just us reading the almanac.
All right, That Don't Sound Right is a production of TSRPodcast in conjunction with Camel City Studios. I and Peter do all of your sound work and video work, and we're very grateful for you being here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Giorgio Test, our overpriced, slow merchandise. Brent is our international brand ambassador. I saw him this week. He was wearing our merchandise, promoting the brand. And as always, listener number one is Scott. So until next week, keep talking
And stay curious.